We need people who can do more, hit bigger goals, Brian said, pushing the paperwork towards me across the table. The company was changing, he said. I'm Darren McCabe, I'm 46. I'd been at Trivana Corp for 9 years, working as a senior account executive. The office was in Kansas City, Missouri. I'd poured almost a decade into building my client list, which brought in nearly 40% of the company's money. No easy way out, just working hard, traveling all the time, and building relationships based on trust. I gave him a smile, thanked him for the chance, and walked out without a fuss. Brian Ellsworth, the new VP of Sales, had come in 6 months before. The CEO brought him in to shake things up. He always wore fancy suits, used those worn-out motivational lines, and never even joined me on a client call. 3 weeks in, he put in place a new commission plan that cut my pay by 20%, even though I was always doing well. The writing was on the wall, I guess. My desk was moved to a corner when they redid the office. My name wasn't on the meeting invites anymore. And yesterday, I saw IT messing with my computer while I was out for lunch. Little things, nothing big, but enough to know something was coming. I put 9 years of my life into one cardboard box. Family pictures, a mug my daughter had made, and a folder with my client contact info stuff I'd kept separate from the company stuff. Just a habit. Need any help with that? Valerie from accounting asked. She looked totally lost, like, what's going on? I mumbled something about a change in offices, trying not to make a big deal. On the elevator down, I was next to Everett Stanton, the big boss. He was glued to his phone, didn't even see me. He had no clue what Brian had just pulled or what it meant for our money making this quarter. But he would real soon. Walking to my car, I wasn't mad, just weirdly clear-headed. It was like I'd woken from a great dream, only to realize I never actually owned the house. The drive home was quiet. No phone calls, no music, just thinking about what tomorrow would bring. My phone blew up as I pulled into the driveway. Travis Hendricks, my biggest client. His text was about dinner next week when he's in town, the annual contract renewal. He didn't know. Nobody did. I just left my phone on the counter and stared out the window. 9 years of building relationships with clients, all based on my word, my reputation. Brian didn't just fire a guy today. He chopped the main lifeline that brings Trivanta millions. And he had no idea I'd been with Trivanta way back when it was still Midwestern Financial Services, before the fancy name and the swanky downtown digs. Everett himself hired me, straight from a rival company. I'd been crushing my sales goals over there, but they kept passing me over for promotions. He told me, I need someone who really knows this market, someone clients have trusted for years. He was right about that, he really was. I took our company from just a bunch of local places to big companies all over the country. We got our contracts to last for longer, like 3 or 5 years instead of just one. I even got Lockhart Manufacturing to come over to us after they left our biggest rival. And I brought in the Henderson Group when everyone thought we didn't stand a chance. Rebecca, my wife, always teased me that I was practically married to my clients. Dinner with the Johnsons again, she'd say, knowing full well what the answer was. The kids got used to me missing their games and shows. It was just normal for me to be working. I always told them it would pay off eventually. Over 3 promotions, 2 office expansions, and surviving 1 recession, Trivanta went from making $4 million to $30 million, and my accounts were responsible for about $12 million of that. Nobody actually did the math until Brian showed up. The first bad sign came at a quarterly review 3 months after Brian became the sales boss. Your client acquisition rate has stalled, he said, showing me a chart that said I only got 2 new clients that quarter. I told him I was concentrating on growing the ones we already had. The Lockhart contract just doubled. The future's in new business, Brian insisted. We need hunters, not farmers. A week later, they moved Julia, my assistant, to another department. The next month, I needed extra approval for my travel requests. My expense reports started getting questioned. Little things, but they added up. I'd been catching wind of some hotshot new hires, these young MBA grads with big talk and zero real-world experience. Brian called them disruptors, of all things. Then, last month, he brought on Alicia Winters, 29, straight from some tech company. Her first week, she was suddenly stuck on a call with me and Travis Hendricks. No heads up, no intro, nothing. Just supposed to be showing her how things are done, I guess. Travis picked up on it right away. After we hung up, he texted me, "Who's the newbie? You training your replacement?" I played it cool, said we were just growing the team. But driving home that evening, I got this sick feeling, that deep down certainty you get after years of reading people in meetings, watching their expressions. Something felt off. I should have listened to my gut. I set my box down on the kitchen counter and poured a stiff drink. The house was silent. Rebecca was out of town at her sister's in Denver, helping with the new baby, which honestly was probably a good thing. I needed the peace and quiet. I grabbed my personal phone and started scrolling through my contacts. 9 years worth of connections. Over 200 clients, vendors, people in the industry. People who relied on me, who trusted me with their business. They signed with Trivanta because of me, not some fancy marketing campaign or our swanky office downtown. My work phone, the one now deactivated in the box, only had the official stuff. The real relationships, the dinner invites, the golf games, the personal numbers of CEOs and bigwigs, all that was on my personal phone. The knowledge I'd gathered, thanks to being a person people liked doing business with, started to wash over me. I took a drink, and this weird tranquility came over me. No freaking out, no stressing about bills or doctor visits, just clarity. I understood what had just gone down and what I was gonna do now. The whiskey kind of stung going down. 9 years of working 60-hour weeks. I missed family dinners and my kids' baseball games. 9 years I poured into something I thought was all mine, just to find out it was. I flipped open my laptop and brought up my employment contract. The non-compete clause was in there, but it was limited. A year and only if I decided to quit. Getting fired changed everything. There wasn't some rule stopping me from taking my clients to another company. My phone dinged. It was Travis again. Dinner was set for Thursday. Excited to talk about the renewal. I just stared at the text for a while. Travis Hendricks brought in $1.7 million a year for Trivanta. His company, Lockhart Manufacturing, had been with me for 6 years. Before that, he was with me for 3 years at my old job. Almost 10 years of solid trust. And he wasn't the only one. The Henderson Group, Westfield Properties, Carlton Industries. They brought in another $1.5 million combined. Their contracts were all up for renewal in the next month. Every single one of them worked directly with me. I put my glass down and made up my mind. I wouldn't call anyone tonight. No angry emails or empty threats. I'd mull it over, wake up feeling sharp, and then make those 3 calls, plain and simple. Not to whine or anything, just to let my most important clients know that I was done at Trivanta, starting right then. The rest would sort itself out. I pulled the family photos from the box. My daughter getting her diploma, my son's wedding, that trip to Yellowstone we nearly scrapped because of a client emergency, something I'd missed out on for way too long. Different choices, starting tomorrow. I finished my bourbon and headed upstairs to sleep in a silent house. For the first time in ages, no alarm, no early flights, no projections to pour over before dawn. Just this calm feeling that Brian Ellsworth had screwed up big time, and all I had to do was walk away and let the fallout happen. The next morning I made those 3 calls. No big deal, just the facts. Travis, I'm out at Trivanta as of yesterday, wanted you to hear it from me. He jumped right in. What's going on? Who's taking over our account now? Brian Ellsworth will probably reach out, or maybe Alicia Winters. A long pause. The girl from that meeting, she doesn't know our business. That's all I can tell you, you decide. The chat with James Henderson and Peter Carlton were much the same. No advice, no trying to recruit them, just delivering the news as straightforwardly as they were used to from me. By lunchtime, my phone was blowing up. Word got around fast in this business, I knew that. At 2 o'clock, I saw Everett Stanton's name pop up. I let it go to the machine. Darren, it's Everett, we have to talk about your leaving. A few clients are worried, call me back ASAP. Of course, I didn't. Instead, I headed downtown to see Lawrence Finch, this employment lawyer. I'd helped his son-in-law get a loan for a restaurant a few years back. Figured he owed me one. They can't block you from working, Lawrence told me after he looked over my firing papers. But they'll try to scare your clients into staying put. Get ready for that. By 4, Trivanta's legal guys shot me an email reminding me of the confidentiality agreement. 5 o'clock and Brian did the same. Let's talk about your severance. Maybe there's some consulting work. Too late, I thought. My phone buzzed again. At 5:30 it was Travis. Just got off a call with your CEO and that VP who gave you the boot. They said Alicia's taking over everything, promising things won't change. Then they even offered a 10% discount for renewing. What did you tell them? I asked. That I'd think about it. I just stayed silent. Travis went on. I sent them a termination notice based on the shift in management. Henderson and Carlton did the same. Still, I just kept quiet. Darren, where are you heading? Because that's where our business is going. That night, 3 more companies from my account sent termination notices to Trivanta. By sunrise, 8 contracts were gone over $3.2 million worth. Everett called a crisis board meeting. Julia, my old assistant, texted me the news. Total meltdown here, Brian's blaming you for messing with clients. The CEO's freaking out, nobody saw this coming. My phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't know. I answered, and it was Darren McCabe. Michael Grantley here, he said. Grantley and Company, we're smaller than Everett, but we've got a better name. I hear you're looking for work. A bunch of people we both know say great things about you. I listened. He offered me senior VP, a hefty signing bonus, total control over my accounts, and a spot on the exec team. When can you start? He asked. Tomorrow. I said yes right then and there. It wasn't about needing a job, it was about finally getting what I deserved. Respect, freedom to do my thing, and finally people appreciating what I bring to the table. That afternoon, Brian texted again. The board had put together a deal to keep me. 6 months' salary plus stock options. Just help them with the client transition. I didn't bother replying. What was there to say? They'd had 9 years to show they valued me and what I'd built. Now, after the mess, they were suddenly throwing money at the problem. Too little, way too late. A week into my new gig at Grantley, Julia called from her personal phone. You have to hear this, she said. It wasn't just Brian trying to get his own people in. I was in my new office, this one bigger than the one I had at Trivanta, and it all started to make sense. Julia was on the phone, filling me in. They were selling the whole place, she said. Veritas Capital had made an offer a couple months back, but there were strings attached. They wanted their own people managing the big accounts, meshing them with their existing businesses. It all just clicked. Brian wasn't hired to boost sales, I realized. He was brought in to take my clients, basically turning them into company property instead of relationships with me. My firing wasn't about how I was doing, it was about getting ready for the sale. How do you know all this? I asked. I'm still in the executive suite, she replied. I see the paperwork, I hear the talks. Yesterday, they pulled the offer. Veritas wouldn't buy without the clients you brought in. After we got off the phone, I just sat there for a long time. 9 years of giving them everything I had, and they were ready to cut me loose from my clients. Like getting rid of the middleman. Not because I messed up. Because I did too good of a job. The relationships were too solid, too personal. They needed me gone before they could just grab the clients and make them company assets. I opened my laptop and checked my email. More former clients had reached out. Everyone in the industry was buzzing about the news. Darren McCabe had jumped ship to Grantley and clients were following. Trivanta's stock was down 12% in 5 days. My phone buzzed with a text from Everett. Can we meet? It read. All right, it's just you and me. No need for all that legal stuff. I just sat there, not saying anything right away. The real gut punch hit me then. It wasn't just that I lost my job. I'd been thrown under the bus on purpose, like some pawn in a big company game, so I grabbed my phone and called Travis Hendricks. Hey Trav, gotta ask you something, I said. Did Trivanta ever try to hook you up with anyone from Veritas Capital lately? He took a beat. How'd you know? Turns out, they'd brought in this dude Thomas during our quarterly review. Said he was some strategic advisor, checking out our industry. He'd been grilling us about the future, what we needed, the whole deal. They'd been showing off Veritas people to my clients. Setting everything up, even though I was still working there, still believing I was building something important. Calls I made showed the same thing was happening behind my back. Meetings were set up, they were gathering info and poking around my relationships, looking for any weak spots, figuring out who they could drop. By the end of the day, I'd confirmed that at least 6 of my biggest clients had been secretly introduced to Veritas folks, all pretending to be consultants or advisors. Finally, I texted Everett back. No meeting needed. I get the Veritas thing now. His reply was instant. It was a business decision, Darren, nothing personal. But it felt incredibly personal. 9 years, that's how long I poured my heart into building those relationships. I knew those clients, their kids, their vacation plans, everything. I even took calls on weekends and holidays. And it all, just a roadblock for some corporate deal. I shut my laptop and stared out at the Kansas City skyline from my new office. The view was amazing, so much clearer than before. Grantley had already snagged 11 of my old clients nearly $5 million a year in revenue, and more were lining up. It wasn't me chasing them, it's just how this business works. People trust people, not fancy logos or some big company strategy. Trivanta didn't just lose a salesperson, they lost the very thing they were built on. And they still hadn't figured that out. 3 weeks into my new gig at Grantley, I got an invite to speak at the Midwest Financial Services Conference. The topic: building client loyalty in a transactional market. The irony: brutal. I said yes, not to brag or get famous, but because I knew who'd be there. People I knew in the business, potential clients, and most importantly, the Trivanta higher-ups who were still there. Everett always went to that conference. So did the board. And get this, Grantley gave me resources Trivanta never even considered. 2 analysts dedicated to me, marketing help, and the best part? Equity. Every client I bring in isn't just a paycheck. I'm building something I actually own a piece of. I poured my heart and soul into getting ready for that conference, not with fancy presentations or practice stories, but with cold, hard data. Night after night, my team and I crunched numbers, pulling together performance metrics for every single client who'd stuck with me through the move from Trivanta to Grantley. And the results? They spoke for themselves. We'd knocked down average response times by 53%, slashed implementation costs by 30%, and client satisfaction had jumped a whopping 22 points. This wasn't about me, though. It was about showing everyone what happens when you put people before profits. The morning of the conference, I went over my notes one last time. No big theatrics, no calling anyone out, just the plain facts. Professional, calm, and well, I knew it was going to hit them hard. Walking into that ballroom, I saw Everett right away, talking with a couple of board members by the coffee. His face went white when he saw me. I just nodded and kept walking. The panel started with the usual stuff about market trends and all that tech jargon. When it was my turn, I kept it real, talking about what clients actually care about. In a world where everything's automated and online, I said, actually taking responsibility is like finding a diamond in the rough. So many companies think of clients like they're just another thing they own, but that's not how it works. It's about building trust, person to person, and you gotta keep working at it. I laid out all the data, not naming Trivanta directly, just showing examples of clients who'd made the switch and seen things get better right away. So it hit me. This whole thing wasn't about some fancy contract stuff, you know. It was about realizing that if you treat your people like they're easily replaced, your customers will show you just how wrong you are. Then, during the Q&A, this young analyst I'd never seen her before speaks up and asks what everyone's thinking. She basically says, "Isn't your jump from Trivanta to Grantley, taking a bunch of big clients with you, the exact thing companies worry about when they decide how much freedom to give their relationship managers?" The room went totally quiet. I could feel Everett's stare burning into me. I said, "Yeah, that's a good point." But then I explained, Trivanta lost those clients, not because I stole them, but because they didn't get what their clients actually needed. It wasn't just about me personally, they came with me because I always made sure they were taken care of. My old company just decided that wasn't their style anymore. I looked at Everett for a second. Every company can change course, and every customer gets to choose if that change is good for them, I said. It's just how the business world works, brutally honest. After the panel, 3 more former Trivanta clients came up to talk. By the time the conference ended, Grantley had signed deals with 5 new clients. That's another $2.7 million a year in business. That night, I looked at the business news online. Trivanta had announced a huge shakeup. Brian Ellsworth was out of there looking for a new gig. The Veritas deal, completely dead. Their stock had tanked another 8%. I shut my laptop. I didn't feel any joy or gloating, just this quiet knowing, you know. Like the market itself had proved me right, totally and completely. The lesson was learned, whether they took it to heart or not wasn't my problem anymore. 6 months after they fired me, I was in Grantley's biggest meeting room with my team and the big bosses. Up on the screen was our quarterly numbers, 8.4 million in new business, and 70% of it was from old Trivanta clients. Michael Grantley himself toasted us the best acquisition ever, he called it. And the crazy thing, we didn't even have to buy a company. Everyone chuckled. I smiled, but I didn't laugh. It wasn't about celebrating, it was about proving something. My phone buzzed a news alert. Trivanta Corp had a new CEO. Everett Stanton was out, apparently they were still struggling. I put my phone away, didn't want to show anyone. Some wins you just keep to yourself. Later that day, I got an email from Alicia Winters. Remember her? Brian tried to make her my replacement. She was laid off along with most of their sales team. Her email, straightforward. Any chance Grantley's hiring? I shot an email to HR with a little comment. Worth talking to. It wasn't her fault, really. What even went down there? As I was heading out, my assistant gave me an envelope that had been rushed over. Inside, a handwritten letter from Everett Stanton. He wrote, "You were right. I chose the deal over the people. The company, everything." He went on, "If you'd ever want to grab coffee, I'd love to say I'm sorry face to face." I folded the note, stuck it in my coat pocket. Maybe someday, not today. That night, driving home, I drove past Trivanta's building. They were taking down the sign. The local paper said they were moving to a smaller office way out in the burbs. I didn't slow down, didn't even look. Just kept driving, looking ahead, toward the life I was creating for myself. A year to the day after Brian shoved those firing papers across the table, I signed the papers, making me a full partner at Grantley and Company. The firm had grown over a third since I started. My own clients now brought in almost $20 million a year. I shut the folder with the partnership agreement and stared out the window at the Kansas City skyline. Same buildings, same city, but everything else had changed completely. Rebecca walked in with 2 coffees, the official document in her hand. I nodded, signed it. She sat down, watching me. "You don't seem as thrilled as I thought you'd be." "I was just thinking about Trevanta." I shook my head. "So here's what I'm putting together. This time, I'm making sure it's done the right way." That morning, I signed off on bringing in 3 new account managers, and they were all getting the same profit-sharing deal I'd worked out for myself. Nobody was going to build something here just to have it ripped away. That was the first thing I did as a partner. Then my phone went off. It was Travis Hendricks. He'd heard about the partnership. He said congrats. He knew I'd be fine. I said thanks to clients like him. Nah, he corrected me. "Thanks to you being you, we just recognized what was valuable." After we got off the phone, I grabbed the frame Rebecca gave me last Christmas. It had a simple quote on old paper. "The best revenge is massive success." I turned it over and put it back on the credenza. That whole thing was over. I opened my calendar and scheduled lunch with Everett Stanton. Not to brag, not to bring up the past, but because sometimes you have to let go of everything that happened before to finally move on. I closed my laptop, got my keys, and went out to meet Rebecca. We had tickets to our son's band gig, something I would have skipped in the past. Sometimes when you lose, it clears the path for bigger wins. Some fires burn off all the deadwood. I was more sure of that than ever before.